You starting this?
Sure am. This Hangout on Air is live now. Welcome, 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 everyone that's watching. The 0 viewers it says we have, that's obviously a lie because the whole world has been anxiously awaiting our first live blogcast, webcast, podcast, whatever you want to call it. Bryce is calling it a blogcast. I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth with it, I think, until we find something we like. But for now, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to get on here and go live, and it'll be recorded somewhere, and we'll get 3 viewers, in 5 years or something, and it'll all be good. It was all for a good reason. So I'm thrilled to be here.
It's good to have you, as always. Good to have our 0 viewers, as always. So let's just jump right into this, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about the NBA because it's everyone's favorite professional league. I know it's yours. I know it's mine. That's for sure. Bryce doesn't like the NBA too much, but we'll see if he has an opinion on just what went down this season. Let's talk about the finals, shall we?
Yeah, go for it. Where do you want to start? We're looking at the Spurs and Heat, obviously the two teams in the contest. And I hear, obviously big talk about LeBron and what he's going to do could dictate, favorites for next year's title winners. But I just think I don't know how you pick against the Spurs unless something magical happens. Where we're standing right now, I think the Spurs have to be the favorite next year, regardless if Tim Duncan's coming back for his 38th year.
Well, before we get into anything about next year, let's talk about what just happened and just how good the Spurs were in that finals. I think they shot the highest percentage in a finals since a long time. It was like 57%. So that's
Yeah.
not bad. You shoot 57%, you're going to win. You're going to win every finals ever played, regardless of who you're playing, regardless of who you are. So the Spurs were good. The Heat were not. They were incredibly average, I thought. Um, every game was a blowout except that 2-point win by Miami. Otherwise, Miami just had no answer for the Spurs offense. And did you watch any of the games, by the way? Did you
I
tune
did
into
see
any
a
of them?
couple of them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I saw every minute of every game, but I did see. I think I saw the second half of almost all the games, and I saw a little bit of the first half of some of the others. But the big thing that I saw that was really bizarre to me is, when you watch playoff basketball and playoff hockey, you see a different mentality, different attitude than you do in the regular season. And for me, I thought I was seeing the regular season beat out in the postseason, and there just wasn't that edge or that extra effort, that just different feel to it that it has. And really, it's just guys getting after and putting forth more effort than they would in the regular season because it means that much more. But I just feel like I saw the regular season Heat playing against a playoff caliber, playoff ready, playoff Spurs.
That's true. Usually in the playoffs, they try and play defense a little more, but apparently the Heat did not get that memo for the finals because they played almost no defense at all. So, the Spurs were good. Like I said, they shot 57%, and they shot 90% that first quarter, 80% that first half of whatever game that was. I believe it was game 3 in Miami. And that was really the dagger, I thought. Once they got to half and were shooting 80% and were up by 25 points, I think the Heat were just felt like they were overmatched. They had just won game 2, and they were just getting blown out in game 3. So I think that's where it started to go downhill. That's kind of where all the problems started that the Heat had in that series. But what can you say? It's the Spurs. They played great.
It's hard to justify this, but I feel like early on in that series when the Heat dropped their first couple of games, it just kind of felt like the Heat were like, "Oh, no big deal. We can lose a couple. We're gonna turn it on soon. We're gonna turn it on next game." And then they did, and it's all right. We'll turn it on next game. Then Spurs have have won 3 games, and they're like, "All right, we have to turn it on now," and they never really did. It was just kind of like they were just very, very lackadaisical with the whole thing. Very broad,
That's
analysis.
true, and they've always been able to just turn it on, and that's always a dangerous thing in the NBA, especially in the playoffs. And you saw it kind of in that Indiana series. I'm not sure if you saw any of that series. I don't know, but they saw in the Indiana series that they lost, I think it was game one, and they said, we're the Heat. We've done it before. We can do it again. They got like that in the finals, and it was just, the team they played in the finals was way better than the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, and I almost want to say it's a very juvenile approach. It's not the approach of we'll get back at it, we'll get to it. I mean, you'd like to see from a couple of veteran guys, especially LeBron, trying to be the big leader that he's proclaiming himself to be, and that he's working on becoming even better at. I mean, you'd think that team would have been prepared, from tip-off of Game 1 and brought, 150% from right then. They would never have had that opportunity or that point where they had to say, okay, well, we can turn this around. It's no big deal. I mean, there are no excuses. I mean, they really should have been, going at it from the beginning and never gotten to the point where they've had to give themselves, give excuses like, oh, we wouldn't really haven't got started. We'll get started now. It seemed just not a very veteran thing. And the Spurs are the exact opposite. A bunch of veteran guys, been there before, better approach, and turned out better for them.
Exactly. So without going more into what happened last year, let's look forward right away to next season, make some way too early predictions about who's going to win it next year. Obviously, you talk about the Spurs maybe being the team to beat. Everyone's called them over the hill for about 6 years now. They just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be the big argument you're going to hear probably across the national media, is especially when the season starts, is the Spurs are favored in Vegas, but how could they be? They're so old and everything. You said it. I mean, they've been too old, for 6 years now. I mean, if they could do it this year, why can't they do it next year? I mean, age is just a number, right?
To some people, apparently to the San Antonio Spurs, age is just a number. Welcome to our one viewer also that is joined in on this one. I think I could tell you his name, but we're going to keep him anonymous right now. If you want to join the conversation, just get a Google Plus, and we'd love to have you. But looking forward to next year, like I was saying, the teams that could win it, I think I was talking to you about this before. There's about 5 or 6 teams, I think, in the NBA that could actually win this thing without doing a whole lot to their lineup. Just kind of, playing good basketball, and that sounds stupid, but you're going to play good basketball, you're going to have to win. Or if you're going to win, you have to play good basketball. It sounds dumb, but the teams that I have right now that could win it right now, San Antonio, obviously, you just saw them demolish the Heat in the finals. Oklahoma City, I put an asterisk by them because they have to figure out what they're doing with the whole Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant situation, if it's a situation. The Clippers, I think, are this season you could see everything kind of falling into place, scoring 120 points a game. Not playing a lick of defense, but when you're scoring 120 points a game, it's not giving up 120 points a game, which is hard to do. I think the Houston Rockets, without any of these free agent rumors that are going around right now, you've heard, maybe Carmelo, maybe LeBron, maybe a couple other guys, but Houston, I think, if they didn't do anything and just went into the season with Harden and Dwight Howard plus that surrounding cast, I think they'd be a team to compete with. Another asterisk by this team, the Indiana Pacers. They just fell apart the second half of the season, but that's not to say they don't have talent, and that's not to say that they can't put a run together and maybe figure something out. Maybe Roy Hibbert actually plays like he was early in the season. Maybe Paul George doesn't just fall off the cliff once the MVP talks start. And obviously you can't rule out. I put Miami / LeBron's team, whatever team LeBron plays for, which may or may not be the Miami Heat. But whatever team he's on, you got to consider them a contender right away. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that could win it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with you on every one of those. I mean, those are obviously the top level teams in the NBA. Obviously, the off season with such big ticket guys like LeBron and Carmelo out there, free agency, anything could happen. If both those guys go to the West, that changes the entire landscape of the East. and the West. I mean, so you have so many different domino effects that would happen, because of free agency. The only thing I want to hit on that is Indiana. I'm still not sold on them. I know, their track record isn't too long right now, and I'm trying to figure out if the second half of the year and the postseason is who they are, and last year, the first half of this year was an aberration, or if they actually are that good team and the second half of the year was the aberration. So I think the jury's still out just because they're still young, but they're still forming together, generally speaking, and getting that nucleus together, and I think they'll be fine down the road, but I'm still going to keep a couple jury members out on them for a little bit while longer.
That's a good point because they have a good front office. I think a good coach in Frank Vogel. The jury's kind of out on him, not just the team, but kind of the coaching with Frank Vogel. Even after they went to Game 7 against the Hawks, people were saying, is Frank Vogel the right guy to coach this team? And I think absolutely he is. I mean, just look at what he's done, like you said, with a young core, with maybe not fully developed guys in Hibbert and Paul George, and even guys like Lance Stevenson. I don't like Lance Stevenson. I'll put it out there. But I'm kind of interested to see what he can become. Family. So there's that. Lance Stevenson's a free agent, but whether he goes anywhere else or stays with Indiana, I'm interested to see just exactly what he'll become and if he continues to do stupid stuff like he has done his whole career.
Yeah, I can't help but try and think of teams that are going to put together for a title chance next year before this free agency and the draft gets underway. I mean, and I know you want to talk about draft, and we can get right into that right now. With it being so deep with free agency, being so rich, this off season, I think there could be just monumental swings as far as talent and team play. I mean, those 6 teams you name right there. You could easily probably add 2 or 3 to that list depending on how the draft and how free agency goes.
Oh, I got 4 more. I put teams that are close, but they're kind of in the second level right now. So Portland, Golden State, Washington, and Chicago. Without doing anything, I think they're right there, whether that's developing their young guys or recovering from injury if you're Chicago, or signing Carmelo if you're Chicago. That would bump them up to that top tier. They'd be the 7th team in that top tier.
Yeah, and from what I hear, those are the 4 teams that it seems like you're really going to hear more noise from than those top 6 that you had, just because they're the ones that need to make the noise. They need to make a move. They need to grab a guy. They need to make some kind of changes to go from that second tier to that first tier. The idea of Carmelo getting out to the Bulls, I think Carmelo is just an interesting topic in himself, almost as interesting as LeBron, just because of the way he can be such a cancer to whatever team he is on.
So are you one of the guys? Can you win a championship with Carmelo? If you were a GM, would you want Carmelo on your team?
No, I really wouldn't. He's an amazing talent, and I would love to have him on my 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 team. But if I'm trying to build an NBA champion, I really don't. I don't know if it's possible. I mean, obviously it hasn't been done yet, so it hasn't been proven to be possible. But his style of play right now is not congruent with an NBA championship team. The one thing that could change is the right coach. I mean, everyone knows about the Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, and Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant's relationships. You got to think that he had a big part in molding them to the player that they became and that they're remembered as now. And I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a coach out there for Carmelo that could change my tune and help him become the leader of a championship team. But right now, don't want him.
Maybe it is Phil Jackson. We all know. Well, Derek Fisher is officially the head coach, but I think everything there is working through Phil Jackson because Fisher first year as a coach, Jason Kidd situation there. So I think more or less Phil Jackson is the coach of the New York Knicks next year. So if I was Carmelo, I'd stay put.
Yeah, I think it'd be the benefit for him to give them a year, especially give Phil a year, a full year, I guess, to really make some moves and implement some changes and get things going. I think he's team president. If correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean he's going to have a good amount of power, and I'd imagine that he's going to be changing things because the Knicks haven't done anything right for quite some time. So I think it'd be worth it to stick around, and he's a guy you want to listen to in the
Knicks
basketball.
news on the horizon just today, though. They made a trade sending Raymond Felton and Tyson Chandler to Dallas for a couple guys. I think 4 guys and 2 draft picks. So doing some things in New York already.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was at the top of their priority list. So I guess we'll have to see what they do in the draft and really in free agency, because without a couple bigger contracts like that, I think they're down like $20 million after getting rid of those 2. They can definitely make some noise in free agency now.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll target LeBron after all. I mean, maybe. Some people think it's really realistic. I think in general, LeBron pretty much has his mind made up already. I mean, obviously nobody but him and his family probably know the answer to that, but you never know. I think the Knicks are definitely going to be an interesting team to watch, just because of Phil Jackson. I mean, they could have a bunch of 40-year-old guys or a bunch of rookies on their team, but they're still going to be interesting because Phil Jackson's just going to do something with that team, not from a coaching standpoint, but from an operations standpoint, from the moves he's going to make. And I think it's just going to be fun to watch them over a long period of time and see them develop into basically a good franchise, a better franchise than they are now.
Phil Jackson definitely a step in the right direction, but you were on the way to a good transition there when you brought up LeBron. So let's talk about LeBron, because he's my favorite player. He's probably my favorite human on the planet, actually. So yeah, let's talk about LeBron. So he opted out of his deal with Miami, left 2 years and $42 million on the table. I think almost everyone is expecting him to sign with Miami again, but a couple things would have to happen for that to happen. Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, they've got to take less money. There's no way they should be making the same or more than what LeBron makes, especially Dwayne Wade. The playoffs this year were just brutal for him, especially the last 2 rounds. So he's going to have to take less. What's that?
The tough part is going to be that was Dwayne Wade's team, that he was there before the other 2 guys got there, and he's going to be very unhappy, giving up the reins to that team, even though he's already done it. He just hasn't officially done it, and that's where the money is really going to say more. I feel like Dwayne Wade feels like he's the equal partner in that business of the Miami Heat, because he's getting paid the same amount. But we all know that LeBron's the one making calls, and he's the one that, if he leaves and it just is Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh that stay there, that's a completely different team. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they can miss the playoffs next year, and it wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, they're going to make some moves, and they're going to have a lot of cap space to work with, to get better. But if you just take LeBron out of there, if LeBron would have torn his ACL, say, midway through the season, that team is in some real big trouble. And I think that's really the key move to him opting out of his contract at this point. He's really forcing Miami, the staff there, the front office, to put more value in him, which we didn't think was really possible. But, if he just re-signs, they go, okay, cool, LeBron, yeah, you're still on our team, good, we can still be good. And then now he's like, well, I'm gonna go talk to the other guys and see what they have going on. And so now they get nervous. So now they have to bring out, all the bells and whistles and what it takes to get him back. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to get him. If you knew, you'd be a very rich man. Let's put it that way. Whatever it would take to get LeBron. But the one thing I keep hearing over and over again is big men, a point guard that can relieve some of the pressure from him, and young talent. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Cleveland Cavs have all 3 of those pieces. So that's just something to think about there.
It is. I think his 2 options are Miami or Cleveland. I don't think he would go to Houston or LA or LA, if you want to go Lakers and Clippers there. But I think for him, at least, it's between Miami and Cleveland. And if you choose Cleveland, you've got to kind of work with the guys they have. In Miami, they can build a whole team around you. Kind of just put some shooters out there on the perimeter, let you drive and kick to them like they've been doing. But how about this time we get some guys that can make some shots?
The problem, I think, though, for LeBron is that he's burned that bridge from Miami to Cleveland. I think, and it's not because of the way he left. I think it has more, well, I guess it has part of that to do with it, but the relationship that he has with the front office there, I think is really the big problem. And just him coming back in general is just going to be very, very interesting. There's going to be a lot of people that hate it, but a lot of people that like it. That's not a reason to make a move if you're a player, but
I think it's easy to say you'd hate LeBron coming back when you're not playing and you're used to winning like 30 games a year. But then, LeBron comes back and you're winning 60 games a year again. I don't know how long
as
you're
a
going to
Cavs fan, I would love to see him out there with Kyrie Irving. I think that would be, a great backcourt, to start with if you were going to play him in the two spot. But the one thing I was going to say though is I think it would be very interesting if LeBron would have been drafted by Miami and he would have re-signed with them, and then now he was opting out of his contract. I think he'd be going to Cleveland for a no-brainer because it would be the first time that he'd be going to play near his hometown. We're not going to call Cleveland his hometown because some people from Akron get upset about that, but he'd be going to play near his hometown, and I think it would be almost a no-brainer. But because he's already been there, I think he has completely burned that bridge. I think some people, Cleveland fans and just general basketball fans, I don't know if they really realize that or not, but I think he's completely burned that bridge. And the pessimist may say that he's going to be stuck in Miami for the rest of his career because he's going to have some pieces to work with. He's going to have some guys getting older, but really he's not going to have a whole lot of other options. I'm sure other teams are going to like him, but are they going to be able to offer him more than what Miami will? I guess obviously that's going to be one of the bigger questions out there. If he goes to the Lakers, who's he going to have to work with? But I think my gut just tells me he's going to be staying in Miami for quite some time.
Well, I hope you're right. Miami's not a bad place. Not a bad place to live. Not a bad place to play basketball. But I was saying before, they can basically build that team around him. Not that they haven't the last couple of years, but they can really tailor it to, maybe the guys he wants, maybe exactly what he wants to do on offense. And yes, it's a lot of pressure to put on one guy, but if you're going to put it on one guy, it might as well be the best player in the world, right?
There's so many ways you can look at it because he is the best player in the world, and every team should be pulling out all stops for him. Every team should be letting him, drive the car that is their NBA franchise. They should be telling him that if he wants a certain coach, that they'll bring him in. Every team should be doing that because it's in their best interest. It's just going to come down to LeBron's decision. And I did hear him say that family is going to be his number one priority. I don't want to, I'm not 100% on this, but I feel like championships was said to be his number one priority last time. So maybe some things are in different perspective. Either way, I just think there's he could go sign with the 76ers and they could put a winning team around him. It's LeBron. He is going to be 80%, of a winning formula that you need. The question is how much longer does he think it's going to take to build a championship team around him? He can go anywhere, and anywhere is going to build him a championship team, but I don't think he really wants to wait, and I think it's going to come down to his personal ideas of what is going to be required to be put around him to have a championship team in 2015.
That's true. And you talk about his priorities. If his priority is money, which I don't think either one of us or anyone else in the world thinks it is, almost any other team that would go after him could offer him a max contract. Maybe the only team that couldn't would be the Heat. So, $24 million and say Los Angeles, either of those two teams, compared to like 15, 16 million is what I think he would probably end up taking in Miami should he come back. So that's a $9 million difference, but
so
got all the money in the world. So
yeah, and with what he's getting in endorsements and whatnot, he doesn't have to play basketball for a little while, and he's going to be perfectly fine. But I know you wanted to move on to the NBA draft, so I'm going to half cut you off and leave you with one last question here. So if these guys in Miami wanted to build a super team, why don't they all just reduce their contract to $8 to $10 million a year, bring in Carmelo, trade away draft picks for Kevin Love, bring in whoever else is out there, and just have everyone agree that they're all going to make an equal, say $8 million or so. I mean, what would stop them? Why would they stop from doing that? If they want to have, I mean, is it going to make it too easy? Because I felt like 3 superstars on one team was kind of cheating in a way, not really cheating, but just kind of cheap, I guess. So I'm just asking you, why can't these guys put their pride and their greed and individuality to the side, take a substantially smaller contract so they can get more superstars on their team and win 10 more championships?
I hope that's a hypothetical question because I really don't have an answer for you for that one. But I mean, it's possible. There's nothing in the NBA rules against it, besides Twitter blowing up and saying that it's unfair.
I mean, like I said, it would be considered cheap. I mean, the same way that these 3 guys teamed up in the first place. But I just, if these guys really want to win a championship that bad, all they got to do is make half as much money as they're making now. So it all comes down to that, in my opinion. I mean, people are, our one viewer, if we still have him or her, may think that I'm absolutely off my rocker at this point. But I mean, that's all they got to do. They just take half the pay that they're making now. They can bring in other guys. They could get a whole team. The entire NBA East All-Star team could move to Miami. They all agree to make $5 million apiece, or whatever it would equal out to be under the salary cap. They don't even have to be under that, by the way. But I mean, it's just personal greed. I know it's a super hypothetical, but why is it super hypothetical? Something to think about.
Well, there you go, one viewer. Think about that. And while you're thinking about that, let's talk about the NBA draft. So I'll just throw the question out there. You got the number 1 pick. You are the Cleveland Cavaliers. Who do you take?
That's a good question. Always been a fan of trading draft picks, and
there's talk. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk that they're going to do that. So I want to hear what you got.
There's just so much talk about this being, one of the strongest draft classes ever. So why not pick up as many guys from that very strong draft class as you can? I can't tell you off the top of my head how many picks Cleveland has. I want to say they have more than 2, but I could be absolutely wrong. But if I'm the Cavs, you have to trade that away. I don't care, I don't want to say I don't care what you get, but your main goal should be to get as many draft picks as you can in this draft class. Trade away next year's, maybe 2 years from now. If this draft class really is that strong, why not go after it as strongly as you can?
Well, there you go. But like you said, Cleveland, they've got a lot of problems right now. They've got, can Deion Waiters and Kyrie Irving play together? Can they function together, breathe in the same air in Cleveland? Kyrie Irving, will he want his own team next year? Obviously, he's got his own team now, but I don't know if he's going to want to stay in Cleveland if LeBron's not with him. Anderson Varejao is not going to play forever, regardless of what anyone thinks. And I couldn't even tell you who else starts for that team. So they've definitely got a lot of need, and with that Anthony Bennett situation kind of behind them, but kind of not, kind of staring them right in the face, maybe saying they missed on a draft pick. I mean, they could use some help. Like you said, they could trade up for more picks, but I don't remember a team that has ever done anything like that you just mentioned. But I mean, it's unprecedented, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Cavs right now. They have the first pick in the first round, and they have the 33rd pick, which will be in the second round. So just 2 picks for them. So I don't know. I mean, get a couple teams involved. I mean, we're less than 24 hours away. I'm sure that's been part of the conversation in the front office there. But I mean, like you said, there's plenty of holes for the Cavs to fill. So let's start filling them. Get 4 picks this draft and see what you can do with it. And like you said, I mean, Kyrie Irving is going to be he's a great nucleus to build around, but don't let him become Chris Paul. Don't let him get away, go to a better team that has something else in place that he's the final piece for. Get those final pieces for Kyrie now. Don't let him leave.
There you go. So I guess what I'm asking is, if you have to take a player and not trade the pick, who are you taking?
I'm not going to tell you. I have no idea, honestly.
I think that's what a lot of teams feel. It's kind of just, a coin flip. What kind of holes do you have that you got to fill? Talent-wise, I think it's, basically a flip of a coin.
But and as we said, the Cavs have enough holes that I think, no matter who they take, they're gonna plug something up that they need plugged up. Literally flip a coin, take your pick. That's why I'm trading it away, because if you pick a guy who's if you take Embiid right now versus taking Marcus Smart, I mean, how much of a jump is there? I mean, some would say significant. Others, I'm leaning towards the less significant side. So that's why that's where I'm stemming from, trying to trade that away. But I don't know. I mean, you got Kyrie, so why not go with the big man?
Injury problems, I think, is why they're shying away from Joel Embiid. He just had surgery on his foot. He had back problems all year at Kansas. I think it's between Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, and there's your coin flip. Depending on what you need or whose potential you think is better. Right off the bat, I'll say I'm taking Andrew Wiggins just because I think his ceiling is much higher than Jabari Parker, and I wish my brother was still in here so he could just yell at our one viewer why I'm wrong, but he's not. So this is the Andrew Wiggins show, and his ceiling much higher. Yes, Jabari Parker is a great, outstanding offensive player, great shooter, but there's only so many shots that you can make on an NBA floor, and Jabari Parker can make all of them right now. Andrew Wiggins cannot. He has the room to get better, and right away he's going to be a solid defender on your team. So I told him this earlier. I said if I was the Bucks, I'd rather have Andrew Wiggins. Well, I'd rather win 20 games a year for the next 2 years and have Andrew Wiggins waiting at the end of that yellow brick road right there than win 30 games a year and have Jabari Parker sitting there.
Right. And if you're the Cavs looking at that decision, though, I don't know how far away you actually are from postseason play. From making that 8 seed, getting into the playoffs. I mean, Jabari Parker will be all the.
A lot of people had him getting there this year, but that didn't happen.
They're not too far off. I mean, we're both going to go back and forth and agree that they have plenty of holes that need to be filled. But I mean, Jabari Parker is definitely going to help that squad out. I'm not going to say that's going to be the draft pick that is going to fix them, and they're going to be the number 3 seed in the East next season. They're definitely going to need a little more help than that, whether it be free agent moves or whatever the case may be. But that's why I'm just going to stick to my trading that draft pick away. I think in the end, I agree with you about Embiid. For all you know, he could be the next Greg Oden or Yao Ming, putting in no time or putting in just a couple of years before the injuries really settle in too much. On the other hand, he could be worth the risk. I mean, he could be such a plus player that you don't want him playing against you. In a sense that you gotta take a chance on him now. Like you said, Varejão's not going to be around forever. Everyone thought Zydrunas Ilgauskas was going to be around forever, and he had to retire at some point. So, I mean, again, go back to the draft being strong. You could go a lot of different directions and still make a right move. That's kind of the way I see it. Glass is half full for me, but my roots do come from the Cleveland area, so we'll put it that way.
Yeah, like I don't know if there's a wrong pick you can make, especially if you're the Cavs. Regardless of who you take, they're probably going to start, and they're probably going to be good. There's not a whole lot wrong you can do in the top, even the top 10 picks in this draft. It's so deep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's really a lot of wiggle room for him. Um, we go all day about, how deep it is, but I'll sit back here and say once again, if they need to trade that pick away, they need to get as many picks as they can in this draft. With that, target of at least 4 or so picks, that'd be perfect. I mean, for crying out loud, they have Jarrett Jack under contract right now. And I think Derek Fisher might be younger than him, and he's going to be a coach of an NBA team. So there's a couple guys that they're ticking time bombs, to say the least.
Well, there you go. I think that'll just about wrap up the NBA talk, unless you've got some other comments to make, at least about the association for now.
No, I'm good. I'm just really, looking forward to what's going to happen with LeBron James, as is the entire world. I think it's going to be great for the NBA that he's going to have another decision to make, and I think if he were to leave the Heat, it would probably be in the best interest of the NBA because it's going to give them more parity regardless of who he goes to. And I think the NBA really needs that right now.
There you go. My last comment on the NBA. Josh Smith, I hope he goes to Sacramento, and I know our one viewer hopes he goes to Sacramento as well. Sacramento could be that 8 seed in the West, so they could make the playoffs, which would be a huge step forward. But they're kind of just stockpiling bad contracts right now, so we'll have to see what turns out with them. But let's talk about baseball. We know who's playing well. Obviously, Troy Tulowitzki. You said earlier to me that he's hitting 200 points higher at home. So is he deserving of being that MVP?
Yeah. In short, yes, he is. He is the midseason MVP at this point. In the article I just covered, I just finished up yesterday. I did, I think, 3/4 of it a couple days before. Did the last couple guys yesterday, and Tulowitzki was at the very end of my article for a reason because he is the midseason MVP. You look at the league leaders here; he's at the top of everything. He's got a 5.1 WAR right now, which is tops in Major League Baseball. He's got the best batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, the best OPS. He's got the best runs scored. Total bases, he's 7th. You have him 6th in home runs. 2nd in adjusted OPS, 1st in runs created, which is very closely related to WAR. He's 1st in offensive win percentage. Now, that was the one fun stat, aside from the 200 points better at home, which I'll get to in just a second, but he's right now, his offensive win percentage is .873, which means that if there were 9 of him in the lineup and in the field, you assume average pitching. It's just him in the lineup because if you assume average pitching and average defense, then your team is going to win 87.3% of its games. And I believe the highest ever in history was by Babe Ruth, and I think he was at like 825 or something like that. So he's he's like 50 points higher than that all-time record right now as he sits at 873, which I think is just incredible. I mean, that's unheard of, especially in the game of baseball, that he's on pace to break that record. But going back to him hitting 200 points higher, let me pull it up here just so I have it exact for you. But he's hitting over 400 at home. Where's it at here? He's hitting 457 at home in 35 games played, and in 39 games played on the road, he's hitting 252. So the big question I posed at the end of my article was, is he going to be, if he were to keep doing what he's doing now, just double everything he's done, which is highly unlikely with the 360-something BABIP, but if he were to duplicate everything for the rest of the year, does he get voted as the season MVP because he played at Coors Field? And, is Coors Field going to be a curse, or is it going to be a blessing? Uh, I just think that if he wins that MVP award, that maybe other guys look at Coors Field in a different light. Maybe they go, hey, the voters don't mind that I play in the thinnest air in baseball, so maybe I'll go there and I'll win a batting title and get an MVP award or something like that. Maybe that helps out the Rockies, or it can do exactly the opposite. Tulowitzki, hits 375 at season's end, doesn't win the MVP because they said, oh, you did 90% of that while you were hitting 450 at home. It doesn't really count. And that was my big question. And I know you're a Tulowitzki fan of sorts. Like to see him do well and whatnot. Although you're not directly a Rockies fan. But I mean, what's your take on all that? I mean, I think somewhere down in there in your heart, you wouldn't want to see him get snubbed. But if at season's end he's hitting 457 at Coors Field and hitting 252 on the road, I mean, you think he's going to get the votes that he needs for an MVP?
I think so. I think he would win that MVP award. I do have a Troy Tulowitzki shirt in my dresser behind me, so you are correct on the would like to see him do well part of that speech there. But yes, I think hitting 457 anywhere never hurts your MVP chances. But that's just my personal feeling. If I were a baseball writer, I would vote for him just because if you're playing, I don't know, on the moon and you hit 457, that's not bad. I don't know how much baseball has ever been played on the moon, but I'm guessing not a whole lot.
Yeah, well, Newt Gingrich, when he was trying to run for the Republican against Barack Obama this last election, one of his premises was that he wanted to put a colony of people on the moon. So, maybe we'll see that someday. Wherever there's people, there's probably going to be wherever there's going to be Americans, there's going to be baseball being played. So, maybe when Troy Tulowitzki III is playing baseball on the moon and he hits 447 at home, and can't quite get up to over 450, maybe things will they'll look at it differently in retrospect. But I just inside, I think I agree with you. That the 457 is going to be great no matter where you're playing. I just don't. There's something that tells me that those baseball writers, guys that are there now, aren't going to buy into it. They're going to say you only hit 252 on the road, And I mean, he's playing half his games at both. It's not like he's playing 75% of them, at home.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously playing more than the NL West teams are, but anybody in the NL West gets to play there a good amount, with how many, inside division games that they have going on. But there's just something that tells me that those old, gray-haired, cane-using, typewriting baseball writers are going to dislike the fact that a team in Colorado has a guy hitting 457 at home. There's just something there that I feel like they're not going to like.
And you might be right. I think I would lean towards agreeing with you on that one. Those old guys are they're off their rockers when it comes to that, but they've been voting on it for a long time, so they've gotten most of them right, I think. But your MVP, your preseason MVP, started out hot, is on a little slide as of now. I know you wrote about him in your article, and I know you want to get that off your chest right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, the pretty much the entire premise of me coming up with that article was because I picked Josh Donaldson as my AL MVP, picked Giancarlo Stanton as my NL MVP. So, in general, pretty proud of how they're doing so far representing my choices. But, yeah, the one thing that stuck out was the WAR for Josh Donaldson, and that's kind of the premise of that entire article, too, is, that, last year, when we saw Cabrera outdo Trout, they didn't really value the defensive WAR. They valued the guy with the higher average and more power. So it's very old-style thinking, which is also where, what stems the questions about Tulowitzki. This is kind of a new style thing. They'll be, the Rockies haven't even been around for that long, So how are the voters and writers going to think about that? But, yeah, Donaldson definitely hit a skid as of recent. But if you look at the league leaders, he's still up there in home runs, and I think a couple days ago he was like 0 for his last 15 or something ridiculous like that. I mean, he's still sixth. He's tied with Tulowitzki actually for 18 homers, so that's good for sixth across baseball. When you look at the WAR, he's down to 4.7. I think he was up around 4.9 but he's tops at 2.2 for defensive WAR. So he's really doing it with the glove, and that's really what's helping his numbers and his value to the A's. So if you really want to look at how a guy is valued specifically to his team, which I think is what most valuable player really intends to mean, I think you go with Donaldson. But the skid he's on right now isn't helping too much. I think if he could turn it around, and I think depending on how writers feel about Tulowitzki, Donaldson actually has a real shot.
Yeah, I like that most valuable to his team. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to mean. I don't know if that's what it does mean, but
I think it's an over-literal definition or translation, but that's always kind of the way that I've viewed it. I always like to look at guys, how valuable they are to their team. I mean, if you look at Tulowitzki and Donaldson, and you look at the rest of their lineup, those could be two guys. Not to say that Cespedes isn't going to be dangerous, or that Morneau isn't going to be dangerous in the Rockies lineup or anything like that. But you look at Mike Trout, you look at Miguel Cabrera. I mean, behind Cabrera, you have Victor Martinez, who's hitting 357 or something like that. And he's up there, hitting for power and doing extremely well this year. And right behind Mike Trout, you have Albert Pujols. So I think you got to give a little more recognition to Donaldson and Tulowitzki for not having those guys hitting right behind them in the same regard that Cabrera and Trout do.
That's true. And let me throw out two more names, one from each league. I don't know about the first one because I don't know when the last time a full-time DH won the MVP award, but Nelson Cruz. He's hitting almost 300. He's at like 294, something like that. 23 home runs, 60-something RBIs.
Yeah, the interesting thing about him is he's leading the league in homers and RBIs right now, but he has yet to really play a full season. He's had some kind of injury bug hit him over the course of his relatively young career so far. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think he played like 130 or 140 games one season, and the next highest was maybe 115 or 120, and he had a couple of under 100 games seasons sprinkled in there too. So his 162 game averages are incredible because he's never actually played 162 games.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But right now, is he the most feared hitter in the AL East? Or you can go north and go Encarnacion. You can pick him too, but
yeah, I mean, I think he'd probably be the last guy I want to throw to right now, because of the long ball threat. Yeah, I'd still take him over Encarnacion for right now. People say better be lucky than good. Well, it's also better to be hot than good. Who knows if he'll be hot all season long the way he has been. But yeah, I'll take him as most feared hitter in the AL East. I think that's fair to say.
There you go. Second name that I'm throwing out there is from the NL, and it'll make me look like a homer here, but Jonathan Lucroy. I know our one viewer is going to like that one also because I've been on the trade Jonathan Lucroy bandwagon for the last 2 years, but that's not the point.
He's an interesting specimen because from the numbers that I saw, he really has a lot of doubles power but not too much home run power, which makes him kind of interesting as far as, if you're going to have – you just don't see it a whole lot in today's Major League Baseball. I mean, you either see singles hitters or home runs hitters, and he's right there in the middle. So I think he's a little different, and I think the phrase I used was unsexy in that kind of sense to the word. But yeah, I mean he's putting a strong case. See if I can find exactly what he's hitting right now. He's hit 330 as of today, which is fourth in Major League Baseball. So I mean he's definitely contributing. I guess you may be able to answer this better. Is he having the biggest impact on that Brewers team right now? And with the way their season's going, maybe one of the more important pieces?
Oh, I think by far he's the most important player on the team, not just from a hitting standpoint, but really, they probably don't factor this into their votes at all, but managing that pitching staff that has been outstanding. I don't know how much of a impact he has on that exactly, but it can't be no impact. So I think between the hitting and between the defense and, like I said, managing the pitching, that has been great all year for the Brewers. And with their 48 and 32 record that they have, I just don't think you can't not look at him.
Yeah. His like I said, his average of 330, 403 on base, 514 slugging, 917 OPS. I mean, just a very good line right there. Shoe-in for the All-Star game. Uh, like I said, not really with the home run power, but he's mashing doubles like it's his job. He's got 8 homers on the year. Last year at 18, 12, and 12 the 2 years before that. So not far off at all from career averages there. But he's got 26 doubles up to this point in the season. Last year was his career high at 25. So he's already has one more double than he hit all of last season. And he played 147 games last year. So it's not like he played half a season or anything like that. He played 147 games, and he hit 25 doubles, and he hit 280 too. So he was hitting pretty decent as well. And I guess I guess this year he's finding the gaps, and I mean, good for him. Maybe help find himself a little bigger contract.
Well, there you go. There's our mid-season MVPs. You got 4 choices to think about. But you got anything else, Major League Baseball-wise, before we move on here?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to hit on was Jose Altuve, and I think this was in my original draft, but I never repeated it actually in the second draft that actually got published. But I really like Altuve. He's leading the majors in hits, and he's a great leadoff guy. Blah blah blah, great average, all that stuff. And I just said it doesn't really matter what he does. And again, this is going to go back to looking at how the voters vote, how the writers vote. I went back to 2004 when Ichiro Suzuki broke the single season hits record, with like 250 or 270 or something like that. Well, he hit 370 that season. I believe it was like 375, which I didn't even remember, and is frankly freaking amazing. I mean, but if you're going to get 250 some hits in a season, you're probably going to hit pretty high for average. And he had like 10 home runs or something like that, very Ichiro-like in his prime. Vladimir Guerrero, I think he was at like 315 to 320, so like a whole 50-ish points below him. But he hit like 38 homers, 120 RBIs, and it was his first year in LA coming over from Montreal. So it was interesting because some of those things, I don't really remember completely well, but back then the voters went for the guy with the power and with the old style, sexiness that people like, that the fans and writers like in Major League Baseball. They didn't go with the singles hitter who was just uncanny and hit 370 in a season. So part of my point on Altuve is, unfortunately, I think the deck is stacked against him. That even if he goes and does what Ichiro does, why would the voters change their tune? And why would they not vote for Nelson Cruz or Tulowitzki or somebody that's going to hit for more power? So that was another driving point that I had for that entire article, and just kind of my general apologies towards Altuve, and just that I'm very sorry for him and that he's never going to win an MVP award.
Yeah, but I think Jose Altuve's got bigger things on his mind, like leading the Houston Astros to a World Series championship in the next 4 years.
Yeah, they're going to be a team to watch. I think we could probably do a whole broadcast on the Houston Astros and how they're developing their system. All you need to know is that they took the guy who developed the Cardinals organization and their farm system and directed all their scouting and everything and player development and all that jazz. They took a guy from the Cardinals who did that so well and got them to be the franchise they are today, brought him over, he convinced them to trade everybody away, stockpile this young talent, and they're going to be basically the St. Louis Cardinals, which is kind of a good thing that they're now in the AL West. Otherwise, we'd have 2 teams, and the rest of the NL Central would be very upset.
That's true. It's never a bad thing to be the St. Louis Cardinals. Moving on from baseball, maybe the biggest thing on the mind of the world right now, do we care about the World Cup? Do we really care about soccer?
No is my short answer. But for 1 month every 4 years, I'll give a crap. I mean, I was telling you earlier today. I think I've watched one half of one game so far, but I'm still paying attention to the scores. Just my personal schedule has lined up to be able to watch some of those and things like that. But I'm still interested in it. I still want to know who's winning. I still want the highlights. I recognize a couple names, so that always makes it a little more enjoyable. But for 1 month every 4 years, I will care about soccer.
Well, there you go. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with you. Um, I'm not sure that I care about it all that much. I love playing FIFA on the Xbox. I'm not sure that I love watching FIFA on the TV. I think I just kind of watch it because it's on TV, and I don't have anything else to do with my life at the moment. Um, sure, I'll cheer for the United States just because I live here, if that's a good answer. But other than that, and maybe the Ivory Coast because they're good on FIFA and they're all just blazing fast. But I don't
So,
care about I don't care about soccer.
but I'll give you my old person response and just tell you that I think it's neat seeing different countries represented, and just seeing the U.S. out there. It's a different feeling than seeing the Cleveland Indians, or one of whoever your favorite team is. For me, it would be the Indians. It's different to see a United States team, whether it's in the Olympics or the World Cup or even a USA baseball team, in the World Baseball Classic or anything. I think that there's just a different level of pride and enthusiasm that people carry, and I think it's fun for some people because it's one sport that we haven't really conquered yet. As far as basketball, baseball, football, a lot of Olympic sports. I mean, we lead the medal count or are close to it year in and year out. We have all of the best professional leagues in our country, minus like cricket and soccer and rugby. So
Yeah,
I think this is one of those things that we're trying to do. We have the MLS. I've heard some people say it's not even a top 10 league in the world right now, which I thought was very interesting because I'm not really up and up on how competitive and how good the MLS is, but um, I think it's neat because we're not that great at it, and it's a change of pace from what we get from other U.S. national teams, and so I think it's kind of an underdog type thing, I guess, would be the best way to put it, but
yeah, yeah.
definitely going to
Everyone,
be interesting to see them go
everyone,
to Germany.
everyone loves the underdog story, so I guess that's why people are watching right now. But big question, I believe the game is tomorrow, USA Germany. Um,
Yeah, I
USA
believe it. Yeah.
they could lose and still move on. Kind of just depends what everyone else does in that group. But who you got in that one?
I hear everyone saying USA, Germany are going to tie. Um, the only thing that I guess would give me reason to believe that Germany wouldn't want to win that game, for whatever reason, would be that if they lost to the U.S., that would mean that the U.S. got in instead of Portugal, or assuming that Portugal would beat Ghana in our group. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I feel like soccer isn't always the most forthright sport, and there's been game fixings isn't a very uncommon thing across the European football, but I'm seeing Germany win by 2 goals.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. I don't think U.S. is winning as much as I love America. I think Germany is going to take this one. I don't know if it's going to be 2 goals or if it's going to be more than 2 goals, but I don't think it's going to be less than 2 goals because if you haven't heard, Germany is good at soccer.
Yep,
So they might
six.
win the whole thing, but the
They're
U.S. is standing in their way.
Germany's 6-3 all time against the U.S. Um, so far, outscored 21-15. And I was looking actually up some soccer stats, which is probably the first time I've ever done that. But the U.S. actually has some pretty impressive scoring numbers. But I mean, it's Germany, and to be honest, if I can recognize 3 to 4 names on the German roster and only 1 or 2 on the U.S. roster, um, I don't see how there's really a shot for the U.S. I guess the Portugal game may be the um, best logic behind the U.S. having a shot against Germany because they basically won that one minus the last second
Yeah.
um, affair or whatever you would like to call that. But um, Germany's a strong team; they're a powerhouse. Portugal may have the best player in the world on their team, but I think Germany has to be in the conversation for one of the best teams, or so I've been told.
So you've been told. All right. Well, who you got in the whole thing? We both taking Germany because we don't know anything about soccer. Is that
Uh,
what I'm getting at?
I guess so. I mean, there were some other surprises like Spain and England, I believe, were the two that have already been knocked out. I'm just looking on the list here. Brazil has won the most World Cups of any. Mexico has advanced. The Netherlands, they looked pretty good in the half I saw them play. I believe they were playing Chile, and they looked pretty good. And they had a pretty intimidating national anthem, or I don't know if it was their national anthem, but it was their some kind of pregame chant that sounded very warlock-like. But that was a lot of fun. So, for the sake of being different, I'm gonna go with the Netherlands actually because I did like them, and they looked like they're off to a pretty good start with the way they've been playing.
All right. Well, I guess well, I'll take Brazil just because I don't know anything about soccer, and historically they're good, and that's all I'm gonna say about the soccer. So, unless you got anything else to add, we might leave soccer at that for the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, and there's no reason to not pay attention to it, but uh, yeah, I mean, we'll be paying attention, and then it'll be over, and then I won't care for another 3 or 4 years. So either way, it's all right. I can deal with it.
Well, there you go. I think that's just going to be that's going to wrap it up. I think on our first blogcast, webcast, live podcast thing that we just did here for the last hour.
Yeah, sounds good
So
to me.
until next time, we don't know when that's going to be yet. Next week and a half, 2 weeks, whenever we find time for it, we're going to have another one because I don't think it sucked. It didn't suck.
Well,
All right, signing off for Dan Apinski. He's Bryce Sedio. Till next time, our one viewer that we still have. Thank you.